can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walk through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Weisz.
Dr. Jeremy Weisz here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders like the founders of P90 X, Baby Einstein, Atari, and many more, and how they overcome big challenges in life and business. Our sponsor today is Rise 25, which helps service professionals, doctors, lawyers, accountants, dentists, anyone working with clients one-on-one to stop just trading time for dollars and shift from one-on-one client work to one-to-many. Actually, the founder today, AWeber, is one of the tools that we recommend people use because it's not just one-to-one revenue generation, but it's one-to-one lead generation. We find that service professionals are answering questions one-on-one with clients. Instead, they should be onboarding them to some type of autoresponder so that they can answer them virtually and be free of time. You can go to rise25.com, learn more, and download our free Dream Product Ladder, which basically is a business plan on one sheet of paper that helps you see gaps in untapped revenue. Companies like Disney, Apple, the sporting industries all use versions of the product ladder. Go to rise25.com. Today, I'm very excited. We have Tom Kulzer, founder of AWeber. They're one of the top email marketing providers on the planet and help well over 100,000 businesses build their audience. They started way back in 1998. And Tom, I've been a customer since, September 2009. So my 9-year anniversary is going to be September. So thanks for joining me, Tom.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for being a customer.
For sure. I mean, one of the things I look at, Tom, and I'm sure there was a deliberate reason you did this, was I look for a company that you can actually talk to a human being. And not all companies you can do that. And you guys, I mean, you can call and talk to a human being and get questions answered. That's not an easy decision to make, I think, from when you're bootstrapping a company. Talk about early on what that looked like and why you made that decision.
Early on, that looked like
that
me,
going
myself,
to your
and
cell phone? Like, hi, this is customer service.
Cell phones weren't quite as dominant 20 years ago. They were around, but not quite as dominant. But no, I had a landline. It wasn't even voice over IP as everything is these days. But at the end of the day, for us, it's about connecting with real people. It's what our service helps people do, but it's also like what we ultimately do for our customers. I look at it, it's frankly kind of sad that the bar is like just being able to like talk to a human being like on the phone is such this like marvelous, like, it's phenomenal customer service. Call, talk to a human. That's kind of shocking and disappointing in many ways, but it's really how we ultimately like to interact with our customers.
Yeah, in the world of the internet, people instant message, they email, but there's nothing that you can get besides kind of getting that interaction over the phone.
It's interesting. Like one of the things that I often hear, you go to conferences and those sort of things, and people are like, "Oh, I run an online business." It's like, no, you run a business. You might communicate with people online, but like you run a business and that exists in the world, and you talk to other human beings, and those are probably your customers. And like, I think there is often this feeling or movement towards just kind of like turning everything into like ones and zeros, kind of digital.
Right.
And we're all very analog, and human beings are messy and icky and have all kinds of preconceptions and so forth. And the ability to just connect better is really important. And that's something that we've been doing for almost 20 years now.
Yeah. So at what point did you have a phone number on your website?
The day one.
The day one. So what was that look? Was that just you, or did you have someone
looking at him? Yeah. It was totally me. I spent a good portion of the day on the phone with customers because that's ultimately how you grow a business.
By having the number on there, did you get a lot of calls? Were you surprised by how many calls you got? Did you not get as many calls as you thought?
It varied. There were certainly, initially, obviously, when we first launched, you didn't get that many calls right away. But over time, it ramps up until eventually I needed to hire somebody full time just to do that function for the business. I think there's definitely a tendency for folks to like maybe overestimate like how much of a deluge you might get in phone calls.
Right.
But at the same time, like, that's usually good because those calls should be leading to business, which should allow you to grow, which should allow you to hire somebody to do that. And,
Right.
now we have 35 people or so that manage that on a daily basis for us.
At what point did you decide that you needed someone else to help? I guess at what point should you? At what point should you have hired, and at what point did you actually hire someone?
Yeah, that's a really good question because there's an important distinction there. So I ran everything myself for the first 2 years. I probably should have hired someone like within 6 months of starting. Like I had the revenue base to be able to do it. And delaying that was, there was a bit of fear. There was a bit of, and the fear of like the unknown of like, hey, now I'm responsible for another human being's income. And that's a big responsibility as a business owner. There was a fear of like, just kind of the unknown of like, I don't know how to hire somebody. Ultimately, the hiring someone wasn't all that hard. And then it was like, well, how do I pay someone? Like, you got to deal with payroll, and that's this like weird nebulous.
You got in this to send emails, not to do HR, right?
Right, exactly. Until ultimately you realize like there's a million companies that do payroll out there, and they make it really easy.
What did you hire for? What were you looking for? And what were you? I mean, position-wise, and then person-wise.
Yeah, the first person that we hired here was a customer solutions team member. He's a good friend of mine. Actually, his name was Jim, and ultimately it was not somebody. And to this day, we don't necessarily hire customer solutions team members to be techies. We hire them for their personality, for how they interact with people, for how they can. Like kind of disarms probably not the appropriate word, but like, how you can
put someone at ease.
How you can put somebody at ease.
Yeah.
And, basically be able to like, a customer might tell you they want X, but ultimately the problem that they're trying to solve is something entirely different, and being inquisitive enough and knowing how to ask the right questions to actually go from point A to point Z, to figure out a solution. Like we're very purposeful about like, I don't call our team like, it's not customer service team, it's customer solution team. Because if customers calling us or emailing us or, getting on not HipChat, but getting on Instant Messenger, like they want a solution to something. They have a problem, they need a solution. So we're here to provide solutions. So it's about how a person processes to be able to think like that and to be able to ask the appropriate questions to get that solution for a customer. It's really important. Yeah,
I like the distinction of the solutions. So how do you find the right person and hire for that position? Because I know, like from what I've read, and anyone who looks up AWeber, the culture and the customer service is really key. I mean, you guys have year after year won best places to work. So you're obviously doing something right. So what do you look for? And it starts with the hiring process, like finding the right people. So how do you find the right people? What questions do you ask or things you do besides hiring? Because you'll run out of friends, maybe not, at some point where you know them and you and they trust you.
I hope to think we'll never run out of friends.
Right, exactly.
No, I don't just hire all my friends. That'd be weird. Ultimately, like there's a number of different things we do. We have like an internal referral program. It's amazing how, you want to encourage diversity and those sort of things. But it's amazing how the team members that you already have tend to also be friends and have other acquaintances that think like them. And you don't want everyone to think the same, but like, you tend to, if you're an ass, like you don't tend to, or if you're an ass yourself, you tend to hang out with other ass. If you're a good, if you're a really outgoing, friendly person, you tend to associate with other people that are like really outgoing and friendly. So like we have an internal referral program, where we bonus folks for referrals. We also do, we go to a lot of career fairs and those sort of things where you just, you're looking for people that are outgoing, that show up to things, that are making an effort to get out and do stuff and interact with other people. The people that sit at home and just like blast their resumes at companies are not the kind of folks that we generally want to hire.
Yeah.
Obviously you can apply over our website and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And we've certainly hired many people that way. But like our application for working here asks like some bizarre questions that you don't normally get. It asks like
what?
Like what's your favorite superhero and why? And I can tell you certain types of people that are successful here have certain types of superheroes.
What's the most
like there's always like the odd random superheroes that people come up with, but like for like our engineering team, it's almost always Batman. Batman is like by far the most the most preferred superhero. And why is that? It's because he solves problems with technology. And he solves problems not with superpowers, but with technology that gives him superpowers. And it's very much like this kind of like mindset that many technologists tend to have, and how an engineer is often searching for a problem that's out there in the real world to solve with technology.
What does customer service people tend to say? This is I think I don't know if this is out there, right? People take this profile. You should have the superhero profile, and it's trademarked by AWeber.
Yeah, something like that. Our CS team is a little more wide open. A lot of that is more about like why they are actively, why they would want to be a particular superhero. At what point,
Tom, do you know you need to hire someone now? Back then, it's just like overwhelm. Like, you hired after a year, you should have hired after 6 months. At what point now do you say, okay, I know we need to bring someone on now?
Yeah. Now it's based on ratio of customers, as customer base growth.
Now it's not your overwhelm, it's someone else's overwhelm. Like once you, no, I'm just kidding.
No, not necessarily overwhelmed, but it's, it looks at customer, the number of customers that we have. We have a general ratio that we like to keep. We look at actual call volumes because those can change over time, and there's a number of things that that change call volumes. Having a really great knowledge base and technical documentation, and technical documentation that's not technical. Those sort of things can influence a lot on how many calls you get. We also look at call volume by time of day, email volume. It's when we talk about because you can get email, phone, and chat on the website. So there's 3 different modes of communication that we're dealing with customers, and it's all of the volumes tend to be different, around the world and so forth. And as we've grown our support hours, those volumes change depending on where our customer base are. Like if we're having big marketing push overseas somewhere, that might influence what kind of call volumes and inquiry volumes that we get.
I think Tom, I want to get into at some point what life and email was like in '98, but I want to start with, I know you guys have some marketing automation, tagging, some features that I want to talk about, but how do you incorporate features and decide what to do? Because I'm sure, you have hundreds of thousands of customers, and they're probably all like, can you do this? Can you do that? How do you take in requests, and how do you decide on what's priority?
Like anything, you like to think that there's a very specific formula. A lot of times it's about collecting feedback. We have an internal system for basically collecting and cataloging. Like, we've had 40 customers request this. We've had 400 requesters request this. Those customers have a monthly revenue of X. And how does that rank? And then also, like, what is the problem that they're trying to solve with whatever features it is that someone's requesting? Because
it's like customer support. It's like sometimes what they're asking is not really the solution.
Exactly. It's kind of, I use the example of our iPhone that many people have in their pockets. It's like no one was requesting to get rid of the keyboard. But ultimately,
I still have my keyboard. I actually still use a BlackBerry.
But you're in the minority at this point.
Yeah,
but most people were not asking to get rid of a physical keyboard, but yet somehow all of our keyboards went away, amongst many other things around the innovation that happened there. But the things that people are asking for are not always the way that you would solve it best. And ultimately, it's about how do you kind of filter down what is the problem that a customer is trying to solve, and then what is the problem that a bunch of customers are trying to solve at the same time.
Yeah.
So there's this dance between, adding features that solve problems and adding features that ultimately make your product more complex, which create problems. So it's a balance.
Yeah. So let's take that journey through. Would you say marketing automation and tagging are different or go together for the features that you've incorporated?
They complement each other.
They complement each other. Okay.
Yeah.
So talk about, I don't know if you want to start with marketing automation or tagging. What was coming in? What were the problems people were experiencing? And then, maybe it wasn't, they were asking something different and the solution was the marketing automation.
Yeah, well, marketing automation kind of encompasses a whole bunch of things as kind of a keyword. Mm-hmm. For us, it's the tagging stuff is about kind of the flexibility of managing lists or managing different groups of people, and their likes and interests and those sort of things. So tagging ultimately is about the flexibility. So rather than having lists A, B, C, and D, you can have tags A, B, C, and D, but you might also have a whole bunch of other tags. And then it's the combination. It's, people that have tag A and tag C. So I always use the example of in an animal shelter. So you might be tagged as interested in cats and dogs in, I don't know, iguanas or something weird. And that way you can send out emails to people that are specifically interested in the different things. So if I just got in, 5 new cats, I'm not going to send the email to people that are only interested in dogs because it's not relevant to them. They're not going to click on it. They're not going to open it. And ultimately, you want to send emails that are, most relevant for each of your users. So tagging is about the flexibility of not then, being able to add and remove those tags more dynamically and not having to add and remove people to specific lists and dealing with merging and, that sort of stuff with lists. So both still exist because some people's brains just kind of think in this list model and other people's brains just kind of think in this tagging model. Yeah. And then they both exist. They both can coexist. You can use one without the other. Or you can use them interchangeably. So for the tagging,
Tom, can that be across different lists that you have? Let's say you have 10 lists on your AWeber, and you tag different people in different lists with iguana. Can that send an email across different lists, or does it have to be within the same list?
You would need to be if
that makes sense.
Yes and no. So if you sent a broadcast or something to to those, you would need to include the list that you wanted to look. So you could technically do that.
Okay, so you could send the email to, not to get too technical, but I like it. You could send a list.
I can see your brain churning on how you're going to use this.
Lists 1 through 10, and then just send to everyone tagged iguana, and it would only send to the people across all those lists to that tag. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
What were people asking that you interpreted as creating the tagging? What was the problem people were having, or the solution they wanted, but maybe how were they expressing it?
It's, a lot of it was, some of it was people just blatantly asking for tagging.
They go, I want tagging.
Because tagging exists in lots of other things. I'm a Mac user, so my examples are often Mac related. But in iPhoto, you tag photos. In contacts, you tag contacts. A lot of the way that programs and so forth work these days, they incorporate some functionality that you would consider to be tagging. So you go on Twitter and you can hashtag things, and you go on we were talking about these photos behind me. This is a AWeber Life tag on Instagram. It's ways of kind of grouping like content. So there's a bunch of it's the flexibility around being able to do that. And so some people ask for it blatantly. Other people will look at accounts. So I didn't dig too hard in your account, but some customers that have been with us for a long time have hundreds of lists in their account. Yeah. And after a while, basically the organization of those lists becomes problematic because they've tried to set up lists that are, might be old or otherwise, and like if you're not mailing them actively, it's, they kind of decays over time. Yeah, die over time. So ultimately, it's how do you whittle those down and how do you merge them together in a cohesive unit, but also still maintain some element of the relevance of why you had them distributed to begin with. So it's things that help simplify, older customers, longer term customers, accounts, and it's also to just be able to, like, some people think in lists, some people think in tags. Now you can do both, and it just depends on which way you want to think about it.
So in addition to tagging under the marketing automation umbrella, what other features should people think about in AWeber? So there's tagging, what else?
So the marketing automation stuff is a lot of things around, think of it as like, when you click X, you get another email, either right away or X days later or X hours later, that sort of stuff. Or if you didn't click something, or if you did open something, or if you didn't open something.
This something triggers something out, a response, depending on what people do or don't do.
Right. Exactly. So like if they did do something, send this message. If they didn't do something, send this other message, and then the time intervals and so forth between there. And it's also like, if a tag got added to somebody, do this. If a tag got removed from somebody, do this.
Yeah.
So it's the automation around that, kind of thing as a whole concept. So, for example, like if you get the veterinary, or not the veterinary, if you get the animal hospital, animal shelter emails, and you only click on cats, every time you click on a cat, you get a cat tag. So over time, like, if you never click on any of the dogs, I know you're not interested in the dogs. So I've got the cat tags there, so I can segment you out of my. So it's a way of being able to further enhance somebody's profile without actually having to ask them to do something on their side. It gives the user a better user experience if you're kind of targeting to what they want to hear anyways, as opposed to hearing everything. Exactly.
And so, I mean, that seems like pretty complicated to do behind the scenes, right? People want everything to have wave a wand and send an email directly targeted. The reality is you have a bunch of engineers working on the background. How long do those things take to actually go live for AWeber? How long are they working behind the scenes?
Like a feature
development? Something like that, like tagging or triggering responses. It seems, I mean, people want it, but it takes a lot of man hours to make that happen seamlessly. Yeah. What does that look like behind the scenes?
From a company structure standpoint, we have different product teams, so different basically engineering teams that are responsible for different areas of the product. Each of those teams has several front-end software engineers, back-end software engineers, QA. They usually have like a UX or UI role, user experience or user interaction role. Think the design, the way that it looks. There's a product owner. There's usually a team lead there that's kind of the manager for those teams. And then an operations person that helps get that product actually shipped out. So think about like server up times and those sort of things in that particular part of the stack. So we have 6 or 7 product teams right now, and each of them are responsible for different areas. So like there's a mobile product team that's responsible for like all of our mobile apps. There's like an email delivery team that's responsible for the actual like sending of the mail. Control panel team that's responsible for like subscriber interaction, subscriber management. Content team that does like all of our message editor, web form editors, those sort of things, where you're creating content, and then some other teams as well. But like, from it kind of goes from, customer requests. The product manager is looking at customer requests, is looking at our product roadmap and our overall company strategic direction and where we're taking the company overall. Those go into a product plan that goes through various levels of review and approval and so forth, and building out. That then goes, and there's communication between our marketing teams around how how are we going to release this to customers? Like, what's the promotion plan for getting it out to customers?
Right.
How do we look at our customer solutions team training to make sure that they're trained on the new functions, because they have to know how to use it really well, because as soon as we release it, customers start asking questions about it. So they need to be experts on that, ideally before you release those functions. And then it goes into so we use an agile development methodology.
like Scrum methodology type of.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So they go into, you groom the specific, basically you review the specific tickets and user stories that go into building a particular product set or feature set. And then those will get estimated, and then they'll be brought into a 2-week sprint, and iterated on until we get them done. And part of the grooming process helps establish like how long it's ultimately going to take to actually develop, a specific feature. And that helps give us some element of that product roadmap, that product pipeline of how long different things are going to take. So,
Tom, thanks for sharing. I appreciate you sharing that, because I think it's like the non-sexy stuff that actually makes things work and get things out the door. And if anyone like fell asleep for a minute, they missed out on a huge amount of nuggets and knowledge, because I use it just for to-do tasks, like Scrum methodology. I'm curious of where you guys, did someone become Scrum certified? Did you just learn it over time because programmers coming in? Because I've researched this stuff and I just use it, the to-do doing done board on Asana, and for daily, just to be productive and get things done, so.
We have a number of people that are certified here for agile methodology, Scrum, Kanban, et cetera. So it's something where everyone is learning from those things. You'll also learn, like, ultimately there's like an agile methodology, but like ultimately I think there are certain folks that I've worked with over the years where agile is like a very specific thing to them. And like, if you're not doing it by the book, you're not doing agile. And I'm of the belief of like just go back to the word agile.
Right, exactly.
Agile
I was going to say.
Like, do what works for you.
Right.
And like, not everything that is in like the manifesto is necessarily going to work in each organization. You have to, be agile. Like, adopt the things that work. The things that don't, stop doing them, because that's crazy. You know what I mean? So it's just be agile around iterating on what works.
What do you use to manage all that? What software?
We use the Atlassian stack with Confluence and Jira. So it's most of what we use.
How do you, besides outside of the business stuff, you have a million things to manage with the company life. What do you do? What do you use to stay productive? Like I said, I even, personal stuff I'm putting on Asana to make sure it gets done, actually. What kind of things do you do to keep on track to stay productive, whether it's a tool or software or something?
So me personally, I spend most of my day, obviously in a web browser, Confluence, Jira, I spend a lot of time there, Mac Mail, OS 10, Mac Notes, the Apple Notes program, but OmniFocus is probably the biggest one.
What's that?
It's a GTD, getting things done application for kind of to-do management. And that's the tool that I use personally to kind of organize my life, both personally and professionally. It doesn't happen if it's not in OmniFocus. To the point like my wife is trained, trained. I use that in the nicest of ways.
She's trained you, but
she's trained me, very much so. But like, she knows, like, if she needs me to do something, it needs to be an email, and when that email comes into me, like, it gets put into OmniFocus, and like, if it doesn't end up in OmniFocus, like, it doesn't get done, because I've just, there's too many things in all the different directions that it's really easy to lose track of things. And I find that it's most valuable to write it down. I know it's remembered. I know it's going to prompt me at the right period of time, so I don't need to think about it again until it prompts me to deal with it again.
Less decision making or headspace that you need to take up the better.
It's just make a decision, put it somewhere, and when you need to deal with it again, it'll be back at you.
Yeah.
But until then, you don't need to think about it again.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the interesting part, Tom, is like you learn this from the school of life because this was becoming successful and you dropped out of college, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I did 2 years of school. So I was a mechanical engineer my first year, decided I didn't want to do that and switched to finance. And yeah, now I do nothing like really either one of those. Finance, sort of, but you know, my professional career looks nothing like what my background education actually was.
Was that a tough decision at the time? To say, well, I'm just gonna go all in on this and not go back to school, because it's not like you didn't know what you're doing. You had I think you were going to mechanical engineering. I mean, you could do a lot of things with that. Was that difficult at the time when you were, if you think back? I mean, now it seems obvious, but back then maybe not so much. The decision to drop out.
Yeah. You know, in retrospect, yeah, I would totally drop out all over again. At the time, I looked at it as an experiment. You know, frankly, like, you know, I came from, you know, I have my parents were divorced, and, you know, I was living with my mom and stepdad at the time, you know, prior to school and whatnot. And, you know, I had a safety net. And ultimately, you know, I looked at it as, I kind of pitched it to my parents as like, let me try this for 6 months and see how it goes. If it doesn't work, I'll go back to school. If it does, we'll figure that out in 6 months.
And what did they say to that?
And, you know, ultimately they were supportive of the decision. So, you know, it took, you know, like any parents, like, it takes a little massaging there to make that happen.
Yeah, it's a kind of a bomb to drop on parents sometimes.
Yeah, like I have young kids now, and like I don't know how I would do that. So
you're like, do as I say, not as I do. You're going.
Yeah. It's always fun when I like talk to friends' kids and so forth that are like going off to college, and they're like, "Oh, well, what'd you do in college?" And I'm, you know, I dropped out.
Well, you can just frame it. I went for 2 years instead of
I went for 2 years. You know, it's funny because, like, you know, if I had college to do all over again, I'd have probably gone and gotten a computer science degree.
Yeah.
But like, I didn't really even, the thought never even occurred to me that that's what I should do back then.
So what do you think when your kids get to be, I don't know how old they are, but when they get to be college age and they maybe don't want to go?
Unless they have something that they want to be doing, specifically, if they haven't figured out what their purpose is yet, I would absolutely encourage them to go to some sort of college. Now, I think one thing that has that my horizons have been broadened substantially over the years is, like, there are so many different types of college. What most people think of college is just like one kind of narrow set. There are a lot of other types of experiences where you can get an education that are outside of the norm that I think are very good and healthy and you know, frankly, what many kids actually need to be interested in school and to go off and then excel in the world. So there's so many other things that you get out of college than just like book learning.
Yeah.
I'm not a book learning guy. Like, I don't remember formulas and that kind of stuff, but I know how to find answers. I know how to solve problems, and I think ultimately, like, that's one of the biggest things that you need in life to be able to, like, you know, go out and be successful. So had a lot of good luck at the same time. So, but you know,
Tom,
I'm a firm believer.
I love that, because I mean, the education is changing with online, you know.
Yeah.
So I was curious your take also, because even back when, you know, traditional school was there wasn't these online options. You chose a different route, you know. So I think kids will have more options in the next 5-10 years.
Absolutely. Yeah. So.
What was email like in '98?
Text.
I mean, I don't even.
It was all text.
It was text. AOL. Who were the players in '98?
Who were the players in '98? This is 20 years ago, so I'm just going off the top of my memory. But no, I will undoubtedly be wrong. But, you know, Hotmail, I believe, was the most dominant at the time. AOL and Yahoo were not too far behind, if I recall, or somewhere around there. AOL was definitely a big factor then, much bigger factor than they are today. Today they're pretty much non-existent. Actually, they've been recently forked by the Verizon.
Really?
Yeah, so it still exists as a domain, but it's managed by Verizon these days. Gmail wasn't a thing, and now Gmail's like, depending on the customer's list, it can be 30% of your mailing list. It could be 60 or 70% of your subscriber base. So that world has changed substantially over the years.
What was the initial pricing model? Do you remember? Was it for AWeber?
It was $19.95 per month for one list with 7 follow-up messages and unlimited subscribers.
Yeah.
It was a terrible pricing model.
It hasn't changed. It hasn't changed that much, really. I mean, now you get unlimited. You get even more now.
Yeah, well, you get, you can have as many different lists as you want in the account. You can have as many different messages in the account, but it's based on your pricing is based on the number of subscribers that you have.
Right.
And ultimately that follows the economic value, proposition. The more subscribers somebody has, the more value that we're providing for them overall. From that standpoint, and it's pretty much an industry standard at this point around how people price. Some providers have a cap on like the number of messages that you can send, depending on what subscriber tier that you're at.
Why is that? So, just because they're using more bandwidth, so they have to charge more.
Yeah, well, there's some element of it's an abuse prevention tool, and it's also just an economic aspect of, hey, if you're sending a lot more messages, you're getting a lot more value out of it, so I'm going to charge you more.
Yeah.
We charge more for the number of emails that you send. You can send as however you want to email people 3 times a day. Go for it. Assuming that's what they've opted in for.
What are the biggest objections people get for signing up? I mean, when I tell people, we get a lot of things. Well, listen, it's $19 a month. Like, if you can't make $19 a month back on your list, then there's an issue, a broader issue.
Yes.
But I mean, so I don't know. Maybe it's not the money why people will do it, but you probably on the front lines, people are like maybe hemming and hawing on it's a big decision. I remember back 9 years ago, I think I even used Auto Response Plus, like previous to AWeber. Do you remember Auto Response? It was like you install it, and I'm like, oh, this is awesome. And then I'm like, why am I doing this? This is crazy. I need to just sign up with it. And I don't even remember at the time why I did that, but maybe it still exists today. I don't know. But you install it on your own server. I'm like, I'm not an expert at this. I'm not messing with installing.
I think they are still around. I haven't heard of them specifically for a while, but I think they are still around. But you've got to essentially manage all your own delivery and all of the technical infrastructure around delivering email.
Horrible idea.
Yeah. For most people,
for me, yeah.
For the vast majority of people, that's not a great idea. So we have 20 years of experience. Like, I personally have 20 years of experience getting email delivery. Not to mention many people that work here. Like, we have folks that have been in the email industry here longer than I have.
Yeah.
That deal with our email delivery and other aspects of the business. So it's the combined knowledge here is vastly superior to anybody that's going to try to run their own mail servers.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, and I totally blanked on what your actual question was.
I was just chatting about what it looked like in '98, and I mean the evolution. What were some of the big milestones evolution-wise in AWeber? We kind of took it to today, which is marketing automation, tagging, triggering with different features.
Yeah. There's a couple of different ways to think about the evolution of AWeber overall. You can look at it from like, what is it as a feature set? You can look at it from like what it is around like as a company from an overall company growth and kind of milestones there. I think as you grow a company, there are certain inflection points at which like the things that worked in the past do not work to go forward. Just like team sizes, management structures, how you get products delivered to customers, etc. There've been, big technical innovations, like there's tons of stuff behind the scenes. You remember, I got 50 or 60 people that are showing up here every day that are writing software code. Like, you don't see new features on the site every single day, right. But I guarantee we push code changes to the site multiple times a day from multiple teams. So there were probably, today, by 2:00-ish today that we're, filming this in, there probably been, actually I don't have that open at the moment, but like there probably been like 15 different code changes today that touched various live services, whether they're performance improvements, whether they're architectural changes on how we do things to make things, perform better from a cost standpoint or to make them faster, et cetera, to laying the groundwork for new features. I know personally there's 3 different things right now that are in production that are behind production feature flags, where like some percentage of our customers are testing things that aren't live, that are unannounced yet. So there's a lot of those sort of things that are going on. And then there's things around like company growth and like different offices that we've had, and
what's the evolution of offices? From your bedroom to then what?
Yeah, from my bedroom. 2-bedroom apartment. I had a roommate.
Okay, 2-bedroom.
I had a roommate. And then where do we go from there? To my basement. I had a finished basement in a townhouse. And then to an old bank. And that was like 1,200 square feet there. To a building behind my house. I had like a little office building behind my house. I liked a short commute. I really like short. And then we moved to 2,500 square foot space, and then we moved to 4,500 square feet, and then we moved to 24,000 square feet.
Wow, that's a big jump right there.
Yeah, it was a big jump. And then we're in, what are we in now? 70,000 square feet.
Holy cow. So is there any thought there, 70,000 square feet?
Yeah, it's a really big building.
Wow.
So, and the capacity of this building is planned for about 350 team members. So we're about 120-ish right now. So those are things that you have to think about and, scale. So, and, do you move into a building that's smaller that costs less, but you're going to have a huge interruption when you need to move them?
It's weighing that cost and the growth, right?
Yeah, exactly. The cost-benefit ratio doing that.
Tough. That's why
space like affords you the ability to do, like, we feed our team lunch every day. We have 3 chefs that feed our team lunch. And
sign me up. I'm moving. I will work for you. Well, I work for food. It's fun.
There are definitely reasons why we win best places to work in PA on a regular basis. Why we rank very, very highly there.
Talk about that for a second, though. That's amazing, Tom. Were any point in the growth did you think about purchasing a building, or is that just it will stunt growth if you need to move to another facility?
Well, there's different, there's different financial considerations to how you manage, an overall building and whatnot. But we're our own landlord here, but that's kind of, besides, that's not necessarily like that's more a financial decision.
Right. Well, yeah, totally. But I mean, everything. I mean, that's stability of the company. Yeah, those financial decisions.
Yeah.
Talk a little about the culture, right? Because obviously, voted best places to work. What are the things that you do to maintain a great culture? Obviously, food helps. 3 chefs help.
Food's nice. Yeah. It's one of those things I often get asked, like, hey, why do you feed everyone every day? And, isn't that expensive? And it's like, yeah, it's expensive. But ultimately, the vast majority of people stay here for lunch every day, and they sit with other people to work with. And, the friendships that have been made here, like we've had marriages come out of AWeber, relationships that are built here. So it's like people build, long-term friendships and professional relationships and so forth that come from just the bonding and the networking that goes on across teams. There's collaboration. You talk about like what features do we build next? It's, a product manager happened to sit with somebody from our CS team for lunch, who happened to also be sitting next to a person from marketing and engineering, and like while they're spitballing some idea over lunch, the engineer says, hey, that would only take like an hour to do, and
Right.
2 or 3 days later, the engineer just did it as like a little side project of like, hey, I made that change that we did. Like, what's everybody think of this? And then it goes back and forth in some iteration, and like you get cool stuff that comes as a result of that collaboration that happens there.
Yeah.
There's no walls here. We're big on, no doors and open collaboration and communication. Anybody can put anything on my calendar at any point. If you need me in a meeting for something, put it on my calendar. You don't have to ask. There's no permission needed. If you got a question for me, it's actively encouraged. One of the things that I tell every new hire when they come in is, I actively encourage everyone here to disagree with myself and others, because everyone has a different background. Everyone has different skills. We're all experts in what it is that we do, and you're brought on because of that expertise. And just because I or somebody else says something and you disagree with it, if you don't speak up about that, you're doing both yourself a disservice, but you're doing all of our team a disservice, and you're doing all of our customers a disservice by not volunteering the knowledge and the expertise that you have. And ultimately, like, I'm wrong some reasonably large, percentage of the time. Like, it's not zero.
We could ask your wife. She'd probably say that.
Yeah, she would probably say the number's even higher than that, just to say that I'm wrong on whatever percentage I picked. Right. No, she's awesome. Hi, sweetie.
That's all right. I get that. I'm usually wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, we're always usually wrong. It's best. You're usually more right if you just accept that you're going to be wrong. But ultimately that communication and that kind of discord and that, disagreement, frankly, like some people kind of can see that as like an argument or like something bad, but like ultimately we all grow by sharing that expertise. So that, that's actively encouraged, and in an awful lot of companies it's not.
Oh, for sure. And I think there's I forgot what the book was, but it was saying there was this one airline that had a lot of crashes, and it's because the second in command didn't disagree with what the first in command was doing. And so because they weren't challenging them, that they thought something was going wrong, ultimately bad things happen. So
fortunately, most of the time people don't die as a result of decisions that we make here, fortunately.
You probably get calls that they think they're going to die because their account's not working or something.
I've heard some doozies over the years, but we send a lot of important emails as well. So doing our job very well is important. It's funny you should mention the whole second in command thing. Like I use that as an example all the time around like having, step-by-step instruction books. It's like, would you rather fly with a pilot that says, I don't need documentation, I'm an expert at what I do, I don't need a checklist for doing this, or the pilot that says, I'm really good at what I do because I use a checklist to make sure that I don't miss steps? Because when I'm ultimately going down through this checklist, the checklist exists because somebody died or got injured or something cost a lot of money in order to get that particular step on the checklist.
Right, 100%.
And unfortunately, an awful lot of people are programmed to think that like being an expert means you don't use a checklist. Dude, I use checklists all day long, every day.
The experts use the checklist.
I don't mess up when I follow the checklist.
100%.
So,
Tom, this has been great. I really appreciate it. Everyone should check out AWeber.com. I had two last questions I always finish with. One, since it's Inspired Insider, I always ask what's been the lowest moment in the journey. And two, what's been one of the proudest moments of the journey? Start off, what's been, when you go back, been a lower moment? It could have been early on, it could not have been early on.
I think anytime you have to let someone go from the team is a really hard moment. And there have been many of those over the years. I'm not involved in every one of them these days because we've got a great team that, is responsible for making many of those decisions. But even still, like I'm friends with, just about I have a relationship with just about everybody that's here, to some degree. I don't hang out with everybody outside of work. But I have a good working relationship with everybody, and I want to see everyone thrive and succeed in what it is that they do. So anytime we have to let somebody go from the company, it's a tough decision. Like, is it the right thing for the company? Is it the right thing for our customers? Is it the right thing for our team? And is it ultimately the right thing for that team member? Because oftentimes people don't make the decision that they need to make themselves. You have to make it for them. Even though they fully recognize it, you have to make it for them. And that's just a hard conversation to have anytime you have it, regardless. Some of those have been harder than others, but that's probably the hardest thing that I deal with on, a semi-regular basis.
And what about proudest? One of the proudest moments or milestones?
Specific moment. It's so hard to pick a
besides moving into
really long time. I
don't know.
think,
maybe in your mind when you started the company, you thought one day I'm going to get to X number of customers or X number of whatever. I don't know. Maybe one day you'll have a 75,000 square foot building. I don't know.
Yeah. Those moments are those moments.
What
tend
about?
to be
Do you
more,
do any team retreats or anything, or something involved with
Yeah. I just say it's it's interesting you should say specific milestones and growth, those are great to have goals and it's great to actually achieve those, but they tend to be the more fleeting and kind of ultimately inconsequential moments. You know what I mean?
It's you reach it and then you're oh, why?
It's we had 10,000 customers. Oh, we have 25. Oh, we have 50,000. Those are cool. Don't get me wrong. It's awesome. And I love, every one of our customers that helps us, achieve that. Ultimately, I think the things that are most meaningful to me, it kind of goes back to some of our kind of core founding principles to some extent. Is connecting people in more remarkable
Talk a
ways.
little bit about that for a second, because I know you guys on the page, you have a set of core values that you go by.
Ultimately for me, it boils down to connecting people better. And it, the milestones for me and the things that are most memorable for me is we had a finance customer way back in the day when we were still really small. That the founder of that company, when he joined AWeber, it was himself and one other guy, and over the years they grew the company into 200 plus people. And at one point, the founder, who I hadn't really interacted with in quite a while over a number of years, he called me up and he's like, "Hey, I just wanted to say thank you, because without the email." Without doing email and without all the advice and feedback and such that I'd given him and other team members here had given him over the years, he's like, I would never have grown this company to be 200 people. And, the fact that you have that impact on not only him and his team, but also on all the customers that they helped. They basically helped people get more affordable mortgages. And basically it's so that the kind of the network effect, or the kind of knock-on butterfly effect of hey, I flap over here and I have this impact on so many different lives is really cool. I often get asked hey, why don't you go work for why don't you do more enterprise product? And it's I don't really care for enterprise that much, because with small business I get to talk to folks like you, where it's it's so much more tangible to be able to talk to you and to learn about your business and to learn about the impact that you have on the world, versus going and doing some work for GM. And it's GM touches lots of people, but it's more nebulous. You know what I mean?
For sure.
So it's those customer moments, and then it's just also team member moments, and the fact that somebody was able to buy a house or had a new kid, had a new baby or whatnot, and the fact that they probably wouldn't have done that if they weren't working here, because of the stability of the company and those sort of things. So it's the personal stuff.
Yeah. Tom, thank you. I appreciate your time. I appreciate what you guys do at AWeber. Everyone should check out aweber.com. I just want to be the first one, Tom, to thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me on, Jeremy. And as always, I appreciate your business here. So it's great.
Awesome.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I'm feeling like 100 grand.